Hi everybody, my name is Suen Sidney. It is my honor to present to you my paper, Mapping Liberty Metaphors Across Cultures and Time. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to Conceptual Metaphor Theory. It is posited by Lakoff and Johnson in the 1980s. The key takeaway from this theory is that metaphors are central to human cognition. So, people will try to articulate and express very complex ideas. They will use metaphors. We can take, for example, the sentence, "Debt puts you in bondage." So the metaphor here is about labor as target concept we are trying to explain is conceptualized as subjugation, which is the source concept. So how we can understand this metaphor is that the effort that a person exerts to pay off the debt is what keeps them subjugated. The subject of liberty was conceptualized and analyzed using the lens of philosophy or history. Towards more modern era, the methodology would slowly shift towards behavioral studies or interviews. So while these approaches tend to yield very novel insights, they are constrained by scalability. Hence, it is the position of this paper that a computational approach could be used to complement these methods and address the challenges of scalability. Back to conceptual metaphor theory, we could extrapolate it to analyze how societies could imagine and understand themes about liberty. So we could investigate how liberty metaphors could vary across national news corpora. We can also think about what kind of conceptual metaphor mappings would dominate liberty-related domains. And we decided to canvass two key corpora. The first corpus will be the corpus of historical American English. This is a collection of American media spanning from the 1820s to 2010 across cultures and space. We look towards another corpus known as the News on the Web corpus. So this consists of online news articles from 2010 to 2024, very recent collection of modern discourse from over 20 English-speaking countries. So how do we pre-process the data? We have a pipeline. We separate it into two key phases. So in the first phase, we use rejects to quickly screen the input data to separate relevant versus irrelevant information. We have a blacklist and a whitelist of key terms to detect and filter out the pertinent sentences pertaining to themes regarding liberty. So these keywords are organized around themes such as colonialism or slavery and etc. And the result of this is a filtered list of sentences containing liberty-themed keywords. These list of liberty-related sentences would be fed into a framework known as MetaPro 2, the framework designed for generating conceptual metaphor mappings. So, operates in two phases. First is conceptual metaphor identification, concept mapping generation, linking the source concept to the target concept. So the liberty themes are as follows. There are 7 different themes to categorize and various aspects of liberty for analysis. These are the results of our analysis. We do notice that there is a considerable variance of metaphor mappings observed. So for the COHA corpus, we have about 15,000 concept mappings, and for the NOW corpus, we have 11,000 mappings. And the rate of occurrence is relatively low. So how we analyze the output is based on this framework. We look at the distribution of the embeddings across years and the nations. So we try to do a broad-based analysis. Then we can look at the temporal trends using line graphs. We can also use heat maps to review changes in the representative mappings across regions. And we examine how the individual metaphors are conceptualized differently across culture and across time. So this is the visualization of the distribution of conceptual metaphors across the years. So we take the source and the target concept embeddings and we concatenate it with Roberta embeddings. So afterwards, we will calculate the average of this set of conceptual metaphor embeddings and convert it into a bubble plot. So the centroid of this bubble is based on the mean of this. The size of the bubble is based on the variance. Based on this visualization, we can observe that there are three main clusters based on the decades. And the centroid distance is correlated with similarity in metaphor usage, and the divergence in the metaphor usage can be observed across the decades. From 1820 to 1920, the centroids of these bubbles are a lot closely clustered compared to the subsequent eras, that the dispersion of the bubbles is actually getting wider and wider. So this is one way we can visualize the usage of metaphors change across the years. Then across the nations, we do note a wide dispersion of country centroids in the semantic space. Nevertheless, we do observe that certain countries do cluster closer together. So for example, we can observe that the United States clusters near the United Kingdom. And we also notice that countries that are geographically closer together, such as Tanzania, do align more closely to Ghana. And Singapore would be closer to Malaysia compared to the rest of the other countries. So another form of analysis we perform is a theme-based concept mapping frequency chart. So for each of the themes, we calculate the overall frequency of the metaphors, and we select the most frequent metaphor per theme. We can observe frequency spikes, which will show decades where the particular metaphor in question can become salient. So this could help as an entry point to zero in and observe what exactly could be causing the spike in this usage. So here we observe the novelty in metaphor usage measured by the degree of overlap with the prior 2 decades. Lower overlap in metaphor usage should indicate higher novelty, and spikes in this measure will highlight eras in which new types of metaphor usage emerge, such as the 1920s and the 1950s. So for liberty metaphors across the eras, we note 2 significant metaphors. For labor is subjugation and the traveler is exile. So for labor and subjugation, labor is not framed as a voluntary effort, but rather a coerced exertion. It could be used in many domains, such as spiritually to sin, or to addiction, or to debt repayment. For the traveler is exile conceptual metaphor, the refugee evokes the image of an outcast or a person who is forced to flee something. So rather than literal refugees who flee political instability and war, We could also use this metaphor to illustrate the idea of alienation, be it from economic pressures or from ideology. So categorizing the countries in now, we try to observe the geopolitical and historical trajectories of these countries. There are 4 main groups in total for this study. So how we visualize these metaphor usage across cultures is that we use a heat map of the top 5 most frequent concept mappings by country, and we categorize them based on their theme. The more intense the color, the more frequent the metaphor occurs in that particular country or region. Most of the metaphors expressed here pertain to the theme of political participation and leadership. One notable conceptual metaphor that recurs is subjugation, is labor. Another way we observe how the metaphor usage across culture behaves is the Jacquard similarity. We observe that intra-block alignment is generally noted for most of the countries. The global north has a relatively high overlap, as can be seen by the intensity of the colors of the cell. And we do note that this trend generally holds across most of the blocks. We do observe exceptions. Tanzania and Hong Kong have relatively lower overlap with the rest of the countries. Countries like South Africa, India, and Pakistan can also have high alignment with regions outside of their respective country blocks. So if we investigate the way liberty metaphors across cultures are used, we do notice some interesting dynamics. For example, subjugation is labor. Subjugation is conceptualized as labor that the victim is forced to perform. So here, the key word associated with this conceptual metaphor is slavery. So this idea of slavery is used to illustrate horrible working conditions or being forced to think like your colonizer. So another interesting metaphor is relinquishment is group action. This keyword tied to this conceptual metaphor is decolonization. So decolonization is conceptualized as a collective effort to give up colonial institutions or legacies. For Canada and the US, what is being decolonized is often governance structures or the music industry. These former colonial powers are trying to relinquish what they believe to be an illegitimate authority. Conversely, in Kenya, the idea is to decolonize the mind. So what is given up here is the legacies of colonial institutions such as language and culture in an attempt to reclaim their former identity. The same conceptual metaphor can be applied to very different topics, social issues, and political dynamics. So the key takeaway I want to leave with the audience is the value of MetaPro 2, a metaphor-based computational framework for cultural cognitive science that supports corpus scale analysis. Think of metaphors as signals. Cognitive metaphors show mental imagery that people use to illustrate complex themes related to liberty. To complement these statistical approaches, an interpretive analysis is needed because deeper investigation of the context in which these metaphors are used is imperative if one wants to understand and discover what the key pressing social issues are of the time. Having said this, I would like to conclude my talk. I thank you for your time.